This video is brought to you by the Ridge Wallet, the finest wallet money can buy. Ridge wallets are sleek, stylish, come in a variety of colors, and are made with only the best materials. The Ridge Wallet can hold up to 12 debit or credit cards, is super easy to use, and has RFID blocking material to protect you from chip reader theft, and it comes with money clips and straps to hold your cash. Ridge also makes other amazing products like the Ridge key case that is so much better than a normal keychain as it stops your keys from annoyingly jingling around in your pocket and keeps them from poking you when you're on the go. Best of all, right now, Ridge is on sale just for you. Get up to 40% off right now through December 22nd using the link in my description, ridge.com/Gcode. So what are you waiting for? Head down to the link in the description and get your Ridge right now. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden and Limited list can sometimes be a conundrum. There are many moves that aren't particularly controversial, confusing, or complicated, but every so often, a card ends up on the list that absolutely no one saw coming when it was released. This often leaves the community puzzled and searching for answers, as many are more dumbfounded than upset. If you've ever played some of Yu-Gi-Oh's older formats, especially in the first two eras, you've probably noticed that this is a far more common theme. Random cards that don't seem to be anywhere near broken, littered all over the F&L list. If you're a newer player, this is probably doubly puzzling, but luckily, that's why a channel like mine exists. I don't look to just educate the community on events, cards, and duelists from Yu-Gi-Oh's past, but I also aim to give context and, more importantly, explain why certain things happened. In this video, you're going to learn all about one of the most random and obscure cards to ever hit the Forbidden and Limited list. I'll explain why this card ended up there, whether the move was justified or not, and how long it appeared on the list. In a move that even I didn't see coming, this entire video is dedicated to the ultra obscure Dark Scorpion Chick the Yellow. At first glance, Dark Scorpion Chick the Yellow appears to be the runt of the litter, smallest in size, tied for the lowest attack value, and quite clearly, the youngest member of the Dark Scorpion Burglars group. He seems like an excited, maybe mischievous kid who simply got caught up with the wrong crowd and then found himself in a load of trouble. Ironically, that sentence doubles as a metaphor for this entire story. Chick was released right in the middle of the Dark Scorpion support run. Premiering in the OCG's Power of the Guardian Core booster set, the card was pretty much on brand to a T. The Dark Scorpion theme specialized in monsters that upon dealing battle damage would have the option of triggering one of two completely different effects. One was usually a removal based ability that would take away an opponent's resource, while the other often disrupted their deck. Chick was right in line, as he could bounce a card on the field to the hand after getting damage in, or look at the top card of the opponent's deck and put that card on the bottom or back at the top. Both effects could clearly be useful, as bouncing monsters has always been a valuable tool against opponents, and his other effect would give you full knowledge of your opponent's upcoming top deck, so you know what's in store. Of course, you also had the option of just getting rid of that card altogether if the situation called for that. A nice little card with two solid utility effects. Definitely nice in a vacuum, but nothing to write home about, and definitely nothing to fear, right? Well, the thing about the OCG's DM era was that it was basically the Wild West because of how often Konami was lenient when it came to their limit regulation list. If you watch some of my other stories that focus on the OCG during DM, you know how drastically different things were over there from what we would come to know on the TCG. More specifically, how their DM era had far more prominent competitive first turn kill or even pseudo FTK decks. And just for the record, it wasn't always Konami's leniency and hesitancy to bring down the hammer on cards that caused this, but also their dynamic card pool. Temple of the King, Sixth Sense, and Executioner Makura, Makura the Destructor, were all legal during the OCG's hellacious September 2004 format. It was one where degeneracy truly reached astronomical levels. I'm talking about a format where arguably the two best meta decks were dedicated first turn kill strategies. Sends shivers down my spine just talking about it. During this format, Magical Scientist FTK was the top dog. I recently made a video covering how it worked and its story in the TCG, so go ahead and check that out if you want to learn more about it or how it functioned. Following in its footsteps was the very deadly Deck Destruction FTK. This deck is more commonly referred to as mill or deck out in the TCG and was a terror during this time. For anyone looking for more on this deck, a full video will definitely be coming soon. As horrible as this might sound, the meta-relevant FTKs didn't actually stop there. The somewhat maligned and newly errated Night Assailant was unlimited at this time and anchored a pseudo first turn kill deck of its own. This was done in combination with Magical Stone Excavation, which allowed a duelist to draw unlimitedly using Royal Magical Library. As you've probably deciphered by now, this format was super chaotic and very volatile. On the other side of the spectrum, however, was the noble by comparison Abyss Control. Once again, a full dedicated video will be coming to a CapG channel near you soon. This competitive meta deck aimed to do things differently to a drastic degree. It wasn't looking to win on its first turn, actually played defensive cards, and relished in the idea of outgrinding the opponent using clever tricks to slow the game down without sacrificing much of its offense. Again, this doesn't sound like a deck that's degenerate in any capacity, but we all know that decks often evolve throughout the span of a format, and in these days, formats were 6 months long, so evolution could be drastic. As duelists began piloting the Abyss or Night Assailant pseudo FTK, victories via deck out using Exchange of the Spirit were legitimate and a reliable win condition. However, when things didn't go according to plan, they needed other avenues to win duels. Insert Dark Scorpion Chick the Yellow, the little monster that could allow you to steal games completely out of nowhere. While the deck could technically go without it, during this time, pretty much any deck that wanted to win via battle damage was going to main deck a copy of Call of the Haunted, which was actually the perfect partner in crime to be paired with Chick. Call of the Haunted could reborn Chick, who upon dealing battle damage could bounce that very same call to the hand to be used again later. At first glance, this play seems a bit pointless, as Chick would be destroyed, and you would have effectively only dealt 1,000 battle damage for your troubles. What exactly is the game plan here, you're probably wondering. However, as mentioned earlier, Machiora the Destructor was legal during this format, which meant the turn its effect was active, a duelist could activate trap cards from their hand. This now took this seemingly pointless play that combined Call of the Haunted and Chick the Yellow and transformed it into a full-on OTK where Chick could effectively attack an unlimited amount of times. Now when Call was bounced to your hand and Chick died, you'd simply reactivate it and repeat the process until your opponent was dead. While the play might sound deadly and game-ending, you're probably also thinking that it sounds a bit situational and not worth building a deck around. And guess what? You're right. But that's exactly what made it so strong. Duelists realized that it was the perfect second option or backup plan, and that they didn't need to build their decks around it for its potential to manifest into victories. If you watch my video titled No Moss about the horrifying impact of Cybersign on the TCG, you'll remember that it wasn't just the dedicated OTK deck that had to be feared. It was the potential for Stein to be splashed in literally any deck that made it such a threat. At any time, if your opponent's defenses ever faltered, even for a moment, that random Stein could be summoned to unleash an avalanche of game-ending damage. The Chick OTK, for all intents and purposes, was the same exact thing. In fact, considering that it had no cost attached to it whatsoever, I'd argue that it was actually slightly better. One absurd thing worth pointing out was that the Night Assailant deck didn't technically need to draw Chick or Machiora, as Painful Choice was legal during this format and could drop both monsters simultaneously into the graveyard at once to set the play up. If the opposing players got wise to the strategy and chose to put either monster in a player's hand, well, this deck was no stranger to discarding cards and came equipped with Magical Stone Excavation, Card Destruction, Monster Reincarnation, and just a multitude of other options to get said card out of the hand and into the graveyard where they wanted it. As the play started catching on and gaining popularity, it also found its way into the Abyss Soldier Control meta deck as well. The Abyss Control deck only needed to add 2 cards to unlock this potential OTK, and it fit perfectly in here, as Chick being level 3 meant that it would never conflict with the deck's 2 primary stall cards it used to slow the game down in Gravity Bind and Level Limit Area B. Once again, this deck was fully capable of winning without ever using Chick, so this just became an easy button to steal wins if the opportunity ever arose. When you look at Chick the Yellow from that perspective, it's not really surprising that the card ended up on Konami's limit regulation radar. When that format came to a close, Konami went after FTKs and Endless Soups incredibly hard, with Machiura the Destructor, Butterfly Dagger, and Magical Scientist all getting banned in the OCG. Furthermore, they semi-limited Night Assailant and Chick the Yellow just to send a message, despite the fact that the play had already been made impossible by the banning of Machiura. So ultimately, to hit the yellow was completely unnecessary and pointless. If you've ever played Yu-Gi-Oh's highly renowned and popular GOAT format for the TCG, you might notice that Chick the Yellow is semi-limited on that very ban list. That's because that list is just a carryover from the OCG. Dark Scorpion Chick the Yellow had no such meta impact in the TCG, and that's because Machiura was prematurely banned prior to its TCG release. So the Call of the Haunted play was impossible for us to pull off. The card spent just one lone format on the OCG's limit regulation list, as well as on the TCG's forbidden and limited list, both times at semi-limited status. The card would never rise to these competitive heights again, but is still notable in the OCG history books for leading to such an obscure but devastating OTK. And with that, we are at the conclusion to this Yu-Gi-Oh story. If you enjoyed the video, or more importantly, you learned something, give the video a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, subscribe if you have not already. And then of course, a gigantic thank you to my patrons. We could not do this without you. My old buddy and rival, Garen Williams, Brian Ford, Volnuff, Israel Diaz, Ernesto Sanchez, and then my Twitch crew, Akinasism, Big Pimpin', and Super Canadian. If you'd like to become a patron or learn more, of course the link is in the description below.